Hi, everyone. Welcome to a day in the life where I chat and catch up with people I know about what they're doing in their life. And today I'm joined by Anne Chance, who I met through volunteering for DragonCon, which is a huge sci-fi and fantasy convention in Atlanta. Anne is currently in the process of completing her PhD while also balancing being the mom of triplets and an adult son. So welcome, Anne. Excited to catch up with you.
Hi, ditto. I'm glad to see you again.
Yeah, so I guess the kind of the first thing we usually talk about work and then we talk about life on here. And I'd love to know about your PhD program. What's your area of focus? What's your dissertation about?
Well, the PhD is in, and this is a big one, international conflict management, peace building, and development.
That is a big one. Usually I think about PhDs being like super narrow and specific on something.
It's an interdisciplinary program, and people in the program go on to places like the State Department or the UN. I mean, I dream of going to UNESCO. We'll see how that pans out.
That's super cool. So what is your dissertation about?
The way it is right now is I am going to do a program evaluation on World Heritage sites to see if they in fact help to bring about peace. Also, not to get too nerdy on you, but a lot of the criticism of World Heritage sites is that the nomination process inculcates people with democratic ideologies. So I'm going to test that, and then maybe do a couple case studies to emphasize whatever my findings are.
It's really interesting. No, I love nerdy, get all nerdy. Um, so like, yeah, I guess I don't know a ton about how World Heritage sites even work. Like I've heard of them, I've probably been to a few, but yeah, what is involved if some place becoming a World Heritage site?
Well, there's a nomination process, but probably the first thing you should know is this was established right after World War II, where most of Europe had been destroyed, right? And so what they were trying to do is kind of preserve some of the sites that were left. So a lot of the initial sites are in Europe. And then, so one of the criticisms of UNESCO is that the focus has been very Western American and European. And so one of the things they're trying to do now is look at what they call the global South and include many more heritage sites from there. But there's the process is very similar actually in the United States for getting on the National Historic Register. There's a process that you go through where you fill out forms and they come assess the site, and you have to establish what the significance of the site is. And how significance is evaluated has changed over time. And one of the very cool things UNESCO has done now is, in addition to physical sites and natural sites, they are including what they call intangible heritage, would be like dancing, songs, oral histories, poetry, things that you can't touch, right?
Yeah, that's really cool, especially with, a lot of the like colonialization that happened and like suppressing of cultures and or like forcing like, oh, you have to speak English or whatever language it was and not your original language. That's really neat that they're including like those intangibles. And yeah, I'm talking about like Western and Europe. I remember a couple of years ago now, I went to Japan and my family, we went to Hiroshima and a lot of like, and I mean, just Japan in general, like Tokyo was like bombed out of like crazy and like you don't really talk about that. You hear about like I mean you hear about the big cities getting bombed, but then like Tokyo and all these places were bombed a whole bunch. And yeah, that's really interesting. Like I didn't know about the World Heritage sites being something after World War II and trying to preserve those areas. Because I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine. Like, so that's why so many of the cities are so modern is because, well, they got destroyed, which
Right.
is
I mean,
terrible.
Dresden in World War II was all wood and apparently beautiful. And they carpet bombed it and it was just burned to the ground.
Ugh, yeah, it's awful. So yeah, it sounds like a really cool thing that you're working on. And yeah, you mentioned that you've been working on writing some articles. So is that along the lines of what your dissertation's about?
Um, A little bit. It kind of arose from a project I did during the course of my studies, and it's about heritage sites. So I'm basically mixing heritage and conflict. And as we know, there's a lot of conflict around heritage issues right now. And the article I just wrote, which is not published yet, but there's like a little taste of it on my LinkedIn page because I presented it at like a lightning talk at a heritage conference, or they call it an unconference, called Dismantle Preservation. And what it was about is we have like heritage values, and that's kind of ways that we assess sites for significance. And but what I noticed during interviews was that people were like reticent to do a more inclusive history, like, oh, we'll do a little spot over here, or we'll invite them in for a day, kind of, for the marginalized populations. And I thought, well, what is the holdup here? That was my, so I, the long story short is I found kind of a system to ground my research in, where this guy, his name is Shalom Schwartz, and this guy, he's a doctor, Dr. Shalom Schwartz, created this. It's like a wheel of values, which kind of sounds funny, but it's this great metric for, he's got them broken down into 17 little values, and he's got them spelled out in such a way that you can't, when you're coding like an interview, I'll go through an interview and code things based on what I'm hearing, so that, for example, there's a value called face, and what face is, and this is actually in my talk, what face is how you want the world to see you. You're very conscious of what is shown to the world. So I had some of these comments in interviews that really just screamed this value. And what I ended up doing, and it was really cool to me, is I went through and coded all the interviews, and then I had somebody else do it to make sure that the coding process worked the same for other people as it did for me. And we combined, we kind of averaged it out, and we created these wheels that were weighted based on what they had scored. And you can really see how people who didn't want to be inclusive on sites really fell in these like self-protection values, conservation, which my first thought was, oh, well, if you have kind of a universal view and a conservation view, that would be perfect for heritage conservation. No, no, you don't want, the conservation is, tradition is one of the conservation values. Well, racial prejudice is a traditional value. I didn't know this. This is something that I found out studying. And so I haven't made any big giant conclusions yet because I have to do a lot more research. But the way it ended up, where you could look at the wheel and how I had shaded it based on, and see definite patterns to how people were interpreting their sites, or what their values were as they were interpreting sites. So that might get incorporated into my dissertation. I don't know at this point.
Yeah, I can definitely see, like, I know dissertations are always kind of moving and you're trying to figure out like what you're doing with that. But that's really great that you've been able to find a system like that, because I know, like, I do user experience research where I evaluate like products that we work on, and having some kind of system to quantify the qualitative data is super valuable. And I it's really cool that sounds like it's really great. And having, because I was thinking when you're talking about the guidelines on what can be a World Heritage site, it seems like it could be fairly arbitrary in a way. So it's maybe not, I don't know, but it seems really, I don't know. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
That's kind of a yes or no thing, right? So if you imagine that the criteria for these sites were established based on European sites, and now you go to a site in the Sudan, and it's very significant like to the nation or and locally and to the nation, but there's this criteria, is it a universally significant site? Well, that is a very subjective thing.
Yeah.
You're judging for all of mankind at that point. So, and a lot of the anthropologists that I have been reading, they're just very critical of the process. And I thought they did a lot of qualitative work, but nobody's done any quantitative work. So a lot of what I'm going to do is going to be quantitative. And it's going to be a mixed method. So it'll be 2 quantitative studies and qualitative case studies.
Yeah, and I think that kind of having them both really helps bring a story together, because some people really resonate with the numbers and everything, but then other people they want that story, or people like both in general, I think. So I think that's a really great.
Well, and they make these assertions based on quality, and a lot of the criticism of qualitative data, and you probably know this, is that that is also subjective. So if I take what they have, their conclusions, and say, well, let's see if I can test this, and that's what I'm going to do.
Right. Well, that's super interesting. So yeah, what made you actually want to go back and get a PhD?
I'm insane. I mean, because I remember when I got my master's, I was like, never again. I'm never going back to school. And then here I am. Let's see, 12 years later. 12 years later, here I am. Crazy.
Yeah. But you have something you want to do with the PhD, or you just want to do it for yourself?
Oh no, I really want to go try. My ideal job would be UNESCO and being like a manager of some major site, or somebody who goes out and helps people on World Heritage sites, do their preservation and their preservation plans and things like that. That would be my dream job.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool, because I've been thinking about getting a PhD myself, and I keep trying to justify it. So but I love that what you want to do with that. That's
well, and as I told, I had a professor who's like, so what are you going to do with that degree? He was a international policy professor. What are you going to do with that degree? And I told him the UNESCO thing. I said, but really in the end, anyone who will pay me,
Yeah, I know, because it's all right, PhD, now what?
Oh no, that's, my friends who know me really well are like, okay, so what's after the PhD? Like, well, I haven't produced an album yet.
Yeah, why not? Well, what would you say has been the most rewarding part of doing a PhD?
I think the people that I'm a people person, right? Really extroverted and socially active. And I'm getting to know people from all over the world, because they all come here for the degree. I mean, there's people from Iraq, there's people from Syria, there's people from, Yemen, Nigeria, Ghana, the Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, just all over the place. And so it's so much fun to get to know these people and their perspectives of the US, because we don't get a lot of that we don't get to hear a lot of what the rest of the world thinks. And it's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, well, and it's great that an international program has such a big international presence in their student population.
Well, I think, I might be wrong, but I think that a United States degree weighs pretty heavily in the rest of the world. And so we're not, I'm at Kennesaw State University. We're not Yale or Harvard, but it's still a really good program. So
yeah, and it just seems like it makes it much more rich to have that diverse group of people.
Oh yeah.
So you mentioned that your university has a student parent program, and I was curious to know more about that.
So let's see. Last year, right before the pandemic, I work as a graduate research assistant for the children and family programs at KSU, and Dr. Garofino and I wrote a grant that's basically to help students who parent, which is a kind of a hidden group within the all the universities, actually. I think the universities would be very surprised to know how many students have children and how that impacts their academics. Now, most students who parent are actually really good students. The problem is they have financial problems, childcare problems, and it takes them longer to finish their degree. So the goal of our program is to kind of meet some of those needs and kind of advocate for a family-friendly campus so that the students, rather than taking more than, anywhere from 10 to 15 years to finish a degree, can finish in the more average 4 to 6 years.
Yeah, I love that because I think it's one of those more hidden things in academia. Like, I mean, like when you're a professor, it's one thing, but when you're a PhD student, people don't. That's something they hide, and I yeah, it makes it, and I definitely think it's something that people should talk more about because hearing about other people getting their PhD, because I kind of have this notion that I'm like, oh, I have to get a PhD before I have kids because it's like impossible to get a PhD when you have kids. But you're clearly an example. It's possible, and and as you say, there's plenty of other people who do it.
Well, one of my good friends and colleagues in the program, like, just had a baby, and I love her. I'm like, are you crazy? You have another year at least, and you're going to have a little baby. But she'll tough it out and she'll do it. And a lot of women have. And there's stories of women who've defended their dissertation holding a baby.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Mine are none. The triplets are 9. So they're pretty self-sufficient. They can at least make themselves a sandwich or whatever.
What are some, like, I guess, tips you've acquired for trying to balance being a parent and getting your PhD?
This is going to sound crazy, but COVID actually gave me more time with my kids. I think that if it wasn't for COVID, I would be guilting about, am I spending enough time with my kids? I have spent plenty of time with my kids in the last year, like too much time, maybe. But I think that's a problem a lot of mothers especially have. There's if you think about it, it's just disproportionate all over the place. Like, the mother bears more of the care burden. But the other thing that mothers get are, well, why would you go to school if you have a baby? Well, nobody asks the father that, right? I mean, because he can do that because the mother's home taking care of the baby. So there's a disproportionate burden already on the mother. Then COVID happened and homeschooling. That homeschooling almost broke me. My kids know that we're not homeschooling ever again if we can help it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So yeah, you're kind of talking about this already, but I'm curious to know what a day in the life is like for you and how the pandemic has affected it.
That's it. So it used to be, I'll tell you, before the PhD, it used to be the kids would go to school and I would go exercise. And then I was working as a preservation consultant. And then I would, whatever project I was working on, I'd do. With the PhD, well, first I had to lose the preservation job. And I'm really sorry, Eric Kronberg, you were awesome, but that was my boss. He was amazing. But I had to move on to different things. And so now with the pandemic, and the GRA and the homeschooling of the kids, it was a balancing act all over the place. But the thing that really fell off for me was self-care. And I don't mean like self-care. I don't know who's calling me. Oh, it's my father. It's not self-care like I'm going to get massages and pedicures. It's like brushing my teeth. I mean, brushing my teeth in the morning. Did I get a shower today? It was almost like when they were just babies, and like to get a quiet moment and a shower was the most amazing thing in the world. But the thing about the pandemic is people just think they have access to you all the time. Like, I had meetings scheduled back to, like, meeting, class, write a grant for 3 hours. It was like 14 hours in front of the computer. And, my physical, everything, my back and my hips, that it all kind of paid for that. So now I'm like, well, I know I have to exercise, not even just for, weight or whatever. I have to exercise so that my body can just function and move and that I don't hobble around like an old woman. So I would,
Yeah.
like, oh, honey, I'm getting so old. And my husband would go, but cool, you're cool.
Yeah, yeah, self-care is huge. And related to that, when you can, what do you like to do to decompress?
Oh, I play the guitar and sing and write music. That's my big thing. Everybody knows if I go in the basement, which is where I have my stuff set up, not to go down there, just because I'm just getting it all out, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's super important.
I can't tell you how many broken picks are lying on the ground because I must play really hard to be.
Hey, getting out your emotions in a healthy way. It's good. And through a creative outlet. It's really neat.
Yeah, and kind of well, part of myself here is, do you know who Michelle Malone is?
No.
Oh, well, you need to look her up. She's an amazing Georgia musician slash songwriter slash guitarist, amazing guitarist. And she gives a songwriting retreat every year. And that's kind of one of the things I treat myself to. So I go to her songwriting retreat. It's four days long, and I just can focus 100% on my creative side. And that meant so much during the PhD because a lot of what gets pushed away is that stuff that you really need to be inspired to do the brainy things.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate to that with when I was getting my master's. I was just like, all my creativity was just kind of like pushed aside.
I know, and I don't know if you know this about me, I like have ADHD. So I'm that person with like 120 unfinished projects. So finishing the PhD is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, but it'll be great.
It will be great. My supervisor thinks I can at least finish writing the dissertation by spring, which would be amazing.
Yeah, it would be amazing. I have faith in you. And I also know you really like going to conventions. And what do you like about the different ones that you go to?
Well, the two main conventions I go to are Dragon Con, of course, and Jordan Con. And I love Dragon Con because it's big and it's overblown and there's all kinds of people there, and just the people watching alone is worth the money. And as you know, I stay. I even though I live in Atlanta, I stay down there in a hotel, because it's 24/7. Dragon Con, you don't want to miss anything. And I think there's just so many things that I could say about Dragon Con that I love. But I mean, I could go there every year and not see the same thing. I could go to a different track every year, and I think that could go on for maybe 25 or 30 years where I'm not even repeating what I'm doing, depending on what your interests are. And I'm interested in anything. So
Yeah, it's like there's so many things. But then
Jordan,
Jordan, yeah,
yeah,
Jordan Con.
it's just the opposite, right? It's based on Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. And so you got people who are like hardcore. I read the entire series, and I will tell you, I started reading it basically, I want to say when he started writing it, and I would read a book a year, and then the next book would come out and I'd be like, they're massive. And I'd be like, oh, I have to read the other book first, then I'll read this book. Well, by the time he got to 7 books and I had to reread all of them, right, to get to the new one, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna wait till he finishes the series. Well, then he died. I was like, he's never gonna finish this series. But Brandon Sanderson, I don't know if you know this, Brandon Sanderson came in and finished the series. And Sanderson did an amazing job. Well, while I was pregnant, there wasn't a lot with the triplets. There was not a lot I could do. So I finished the series.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to like when book series are coming out and then there's years between them and then like forgetting what happened. And so yeah, I've become the same way. I just wait until they come out and then read it.
Just finish the series. I'll buy it all.
Yeah, rather just binge it, I guess.
And Jordan Con has been small. And I say it that way because, is it Amazon? Amazon is about to put out not like a series of,
Right.
of Wheel of Time. And if that blows up, that will not be small, but it's been nice, small. Like it's such a counterpoint to Dragon Con. You know, Dragon Con, there's just, what, is there 70, 80,000 people there now? You get right. But Jordan Con, like you could almost get to know everybody there. And
Yeah.
so it was nice and small. And, you know, if you go a few years in a row, you get to know kind of who everybody is. And that was really cool.
Yeah, totally. So do you have anything planned for your next cosplays?
Oh, no, well, I was, we talked about this year, and we're going to pass for this year. I think I'll go back to Jordan Con next year. And Chris, my best friend Christy, and I always do Jordan Con together. And so we'll figure out together, like maybe we want to do Sanderson characters, because now they've turned it into like a literary convention where, you know, all these authors, you can go and talk to authors, and you can sit and listen to them talk about their latest stories, and they have a writer's track. um, they have craft tracks. It's really cool. I mean, it's a little con, but it's packed with great stuff. um, so I don't know what we're going to do for that. We had planned, no, I probably shouldn't talk about this. We had something very complex planned. Did you see the cars when we did the cars?
Oh, I remember a boat.
Oh, those were the pirate ships. Those were
Uh-huh.
fun. And mine had a Kraken on the front of it, which I loved. But the last one we went to, we did cars. And I had a 1939 I had made a 1939 Packard, which is what the Adams family drove, like a 1939 Packard funeral limo kind of thing. So I made that and walked around with it strapped over my shoulders. And I had pictures of Morticia and what the heck is his name? Gomez and Morticia on the front. Um, so, so I have this group of friends. We like to do builds of things, but they're not like, you know, some people are very like, their craftsmanship is amazing. We're taking cardboard boxes and, you know, making things out of them. But they have this idea, like, I don't want to talk about it too much. It's very complex. And we are going to, instead of each like have a car or something like it, we're going to have a part of an assemblage that we will put together. So I'm
Ooh.
very curious to see how that's going to work out. I'm not designing it. I'm one of the builders, but and I think it'll be fun and cool. You know, I've got a dark fairy cosplay and a femme Aquaman, but old school Aquaman. That's, you know, the orange and the green. And I have some goth stuff. Um, there's there's a band I always love to see when I go to Dragon Con, Valentine Wolf. So that, I mean, I listen to them. I think I could write murder stories to their to their music. It's pretty amazing and dark. I love dark.
That's fun. Yeah. So I was curious just to know, like on the more personal side, how did you and your husband meet?
So he says this is not what happened. I'm telling you, this is exactly what happened. I had friends that were trying to get me to meet him for a year, and I would say, "So what's he look like?" And they would say, "You know, he's kind of average." And I mean, "Yeah, I'm not interested." Well, they set it up so we kind of met at a party. Well, I knew it was a setup, so I went with zero makeup and, like, you know, just like jeans and shirt. I was underdoing it. But we ended up sitting next to one another. Well, my friends were right. He really, he was perfect. We're both history nerds together. We're just that, we're very nerdy. We're very nerdy about the same things differently. As his sister observed, like we were having historical discussions, and mine would be from a very like social point of view, and his is from a very like top down big history point of view. And she would hear us discuss, his sister would say, "I've never heard two people have a discussion about the same thing so differently." But that's what makes it fun, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool. So yeah, the same interest, but very completely different angles.
So my friend Stephanie, who set us up, said that she's out of the what do you call it, Yentl business, because she's batting 1,000 with me. And every year at Christmas, I send her a picture of the triplets and say, this is your fault.
That's funny. Yeah, and speaking of the triplets, I imagine you have your hands pretty full with them. Do they gang up on you and your husband?
Oh, since the beginning. I mean, we were outnumbered since the beginning. We always joke that we were playing zone defense with them. And they're like wily. I mean, it's not that they're not smart. They are smart, but they're not smart in that academic sense. They're smart, like they're strategic. And we always joke, the boys will argue, like if I say no to one boy, the other one will come, they're identical twins. The other will come and try to argue for it. So Michael, my husband, and I joke that, it's the law firm of Atkinson and Atkinson coming to try the case in front of me. Or making an appeal.
Yeah.
They're just hilarious. I just will tell you, I am never bored with them. They always have some kind of crazy thing going on. And when they were little, they would build cities all over the house. And then Bella, my daughter, she's into art. But when she was very young, the art would end up on my walls or in little piles around the house. I used to call her the art NATO because it was just everywhere. And she stopped drawing on the walls. I was just telling somebody this story today. She was about 3 and had drawn like in the foyer. And I was like, here's the magic eraser, start scrubbing. And she's doing it. I'm sitting there because you have to sit with them when they're that little or they will not finish a task. She's sitting there, she's like, this is hard. And I'm like, yeah. And now we won't do it anymore.
Yeah, life lesson.
Life lesson.
Yeah, do they all have like really different personalities?
Oh, insanely different personalities, considering they all came out within a minute of one another. Well, for starters, Bella probably outweighs them by 15 pounds, and she's about 6 inches taller. So anymore, people don't guess that they're triplets. When they were little and they were all about the same size, people were like, are they triplets? And my favorite was, I had 2 boys and a girl, and they were like, are they identical? And I was like, she's a girl.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
yeah, Bella is like, how do I describe it? My son Lorenzo, he knows the rules, he follows the rules. He will argue his cases by the rules. Tristan will figure out how to bend the rules, and Bella does not care about any rules at all. So that's the way the house goes down here.
I can definitely see them being a good at a law firm in that case. Yeah.
You should just be at a dinner table with us at one night. I mean, it's just hilarious what they come in. Remember when the boys can't even stay in a chair, right? They get excited and they'll get up and dance around. And I'm like, oh, we have a new thing. It's like the ICN, but in chair now.
Does sound fun. Yeah, so kind of my like last question I had is just like around life in Georgia. Did you grow up in Georgia, or how long have you been in the Atlanta area?
I grew up all over the East Coast, is what I like to say. I was born in New York, and then we moved to North Carolina, and then we moved to Connecticut, and then we moved to Florida. And I met my first husband in Florida. And then I moved up to Georgia in the mid to late 90s. And I've been here ever since, but in a couple different places.
Got it.
This wouldn't have been, honestly, it wouldn't have been my first pick, but also a man from Alabama wouldn't have been my first pick either, but we work. So, I think where I am right now, I loved being in the city. I loved, all my friends were there. There's cool things to do in Atlanta, as you know. When you get out in the burbs, here's the difference. And somebody articulated this really well for me. When you're in the city, you can be different. And it's not that people support you being different. They just don't care, right? When you're in the suburbs and you're different, people care because they want everybody to be the same.
I could see that. So not a lot of convention loving moms.
Well, I think they're quiet about it. I know there are some up here. I mean, I have ridden with people down to Dragon Con. So I know that there are people, but they keep it on the down low, right? Because suburbia kind of demands the beige, right?
Mm-hmm, hmm. Yeah, I could see that. Well, it's been really great catching up with you, Anne. And is there anywhere like people can go to look for like where your research is coming out, like your articles or anything?
My LinkedIn page.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you'd like, I can link that in the notes. And
Sure.
yeah. Well, thanks again for joining, and it was really great catching up with you.
It was great to see you too, Rachel. Take care.
Take care. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single show. Interested in being on the show? Know someone that might be a good fit? Use the nomination form in the description.